Annenberg, and I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me. It's kind of amazing to be talking as a curator because I never wanted to be a curator. I didn't study curation. Can you hear me? Louder? I never wanted to be a curator, but it kind of happened gradually. And my work as a curator is really connected to my work as a climate activist. So everything kind of began with Al Gore's film, Inconvenient Truth, which everybody has seen. So I started making climate artwork. I was very concerned about the subject. And going around, living in New York, and going around to all the galleries and museums, I would never see any climate-related artwork, which was really concerning to me. So around 2010, a group called the Women's Caucus for Art came to New York, and I met them. And I was really impressed by the group, a very political group of women. It's a national organization. And I joined them. And in getting to know them, I also got to know the exhibition curator there. And I wrote a proposal for a show that came to be known as Petroleum Paradox, of the catalog here. And when I sent out the call for art, honestly, I wasn't sure if anybody would reply because I wasn't seeing climate art in the galleries. To make a long story short, there were 600 admissions. And what do you do with all those submissions? So I had met the art critic Eleanor Hartney at a lecture. And I asked Eleanor if she would jury the show. And she agreed. I mean, she didn't know me from a hole in the wall, honestly. And she agreed. And she picked from those 600 submissions, she picked 72 artists. There were 72 artists in Petroleum Paradox. And I was vaguely acquainted with the gallerist Denise Bibro, and she graciously hosted Petroleum Paradox in her smaller gallery. And from there, it traveled to a gallery in Massachusetts. So a few years later, I was part of this gallery called Flomenhof Gallery. Eleanor Flomenhof was the gallery director, and she knew I was interested in climate. So she encouraged me to do a panel at the gallery, which was known as Art, Activism, and Global Warming. And the director of NASA, Gavin Schmidt, came to that panel. And after that panel, she asked me if we could do a show together, which became Earth SOS. And several of the people who had been in Petroleum Paradox became part of Earth SOS. And it was a really interesting show. And what happened later then, she was 85 at the time, and she decided to retire from her gallery. And that was kind of a crisis for me because it was really comfortable being part of a gallery and having someone have your back. And like, what do you do next? Like, both as an artist and a curator, I was kind of adrift. And luckily, I discovered this program at Ceres Gallery called Exposure. And Exposure happens every December. You don't have to be a member of the gallery, you just apply for a week, you have to pay for a week at a time. But what happened was, since I had already done Petroleum Paradox and Earth SOS, I saw it as an avenue to continue curating for climate. So the first show I did there was 2019. It was called Endangered Earth with 12 artists. And it went off really well. Oh, this is, well, the picture on there, that's from I'll get to it. After Endangered Earth, I did a show called Earth on the Edge. That was in 2021. And I started using the exhibits to further the subject of the climate crisis. So I invited a scientist from the Earth Institute. His name was Dr. Klaus Jacob. He was an expert on sea level rise. And he was fascinating because he actually saved the subway system. The New York subway system contacted him right before Sandy, I think 6 months before Sandy, and they said to him, which tunnels are going to flood if we have a hurricane? Can you imagine, if we have a hurricane? And he told them exactly, he pinpointed which subway tunnels would flood. So as Sandy was approaching, they took all the signal apparatus out of those tunnels, and he saved the city billions and billions of dollars. He's a very interesting guy. If you want to find him on YouTube, he's very interesting. So anyway, so I realized that the exhibits could also become scientific panels with artists. So the following year, I did a show called Mayday Earth. So this is from Mayday Earth. That was 2 years ago, 2022. And I invited two of my heroes to be part of that panel, Bill McKibben and Dr. James Hansen. And they were going to be there in person, but Bill McKibben's personal secretary, this is a lesson for everybody. I had a verbal agreement with Bill McKibben to come to the exhibit, but he never told the secretary. So the secretary never put it on his schedule. So if you ever do anything like this, get it in writing from the person you're interviewing. So, but they did, they did agree to be on Zoom. So they were on Zoom, but when I realized it wasn't on their schedule, I was kind of in a real mess. So in the interim, when I didn't know if they were coming or not, I met this author, Jeff Dembicki, who wrote a book called The Petroleum Papers Inside the Far-Right Conspiracy to Cover Up Climate Change. It's a book every high school senior should read. I'll say it again, The Petroleum Papers Inside the Far-Right Conspiracy to Cover Up Climate Change. Jeff is a journalist from Canada, and he got this trove of documents from all the oil companies. He actually figured out that in 1958, the Petroleum Institute had a speaker, I can't remember his name, but a famous scientist who warned the oil companies that if you're going to double CO2, you're going to basically change all the ecosystems of the earth. They knew this going back to 1958. So that brings us to the present. And I have a show opening at Yale. That's a very long story called Biophilia in Excelsis. We have a nice catalog, Biophilia in Excelsis. So biophilia is Greek for love of life, and Excelsis is Latin for in the highest. And I have 22 artists now who are addressing our changing and failing ecosystems. And I'm very happy to say Gavin Schmidt, director of NASA, is going to be part of the panel, along with our Eleanor Goldstein, who's going to talk about her Arctic Circle experience. It's such an honor to meet you, Eleanor, and to be with you. And DJ Spooky will be on the panel, and Susan Hoffman-Fishman. March 27th is the opening. I have some cards. Want a card? I'll be happy to give you a card. So I'm very excited that this happened. I want to just end by saying that the climate emergency isn't really widely known in America to be a real emergency because for so many reasons. One is our media, and the organization Media Matters actually did a study in 2022, and they realized that all the major channels, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, out of all the news that was broadcast in 2022, only 1% covered the climate crisis, 1% of reported news. And this discrepancy between our emergency and what's reported should concern everybody. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Cool. Just give me a flag when I should kind of wrap it up. My name is Hayley Ferber. I'm here as a prospective member as well, and I'm very happy to be here. Thanks to Barbara Sherman and Kristen Reed for kind of bringing me into the fold. I wear many hats in the arts, and I think of them all as a very holistic practice. In my day job, I am operations director of the Clemente Soto Velez Cultural and Educational Center on the Lower East Side. It's a Latinx and Puerto Rican cultural center that's been around for 30 years in an old elementary school from the 1800s We are just embarking on a brand new project where we are putting an elevator on the back of the building to make it accessible. So that's something that I am project managing and has been taking a lot of my energy. Before this position, I was deputy director of Shashama, a nonprofit that repurposes vacant space into artist studios and exhibition spaces. So I found myself in this kind of operational arts administrative role. But prior to any of this, I was an elementary school art teacher and I taught art for 10 years. So I still find that everything I do kind of comes back to education. And before that, I had gone to college for studio art. So kind of working backwards and coming present, my own artistic practice is a newer thing for me. It's something that I came back to about 5 years ago and really discovered an interest in bookmaking, printmaking, and then within the past 6 months, kind of a return to painting. So being an artist feels new to me and very exciting. And at the same time, I kind of started getting back into my artwork. I started a curatorial process or practice. And I still also teach on the side. I teach bookmaking and things like that. So this is an image from a show I did at the Yard in Williamsburg. A lot of my curatorial practice has to deal with kind of materiality and the way different artists' work and materials speak to each other. I'm also very interested in place, but this exhibition was 2 artists. It's Rachel Gisela Cohen, who's also the director of SVA's residency program, and they were both previous colleagues of mine at Shashama. So Rachel made the circular works. She paints abstract and, you know, kind of collages over with different kind of materials, different fabrics. Her work is really vibrant, very organic. And this show is paired with Elise Thompson's work, who works with more of kind of industrial materials using vinyl and more kind of a plastics geometric materials. So this was part of the exhibition that I had up at the Yard. It was a lovely, beautiful show. And then this is, so another thing that I do is I partner with a lot of different organizations as a curator. So this was a partnership I did with Residency Unlimited, which is primarily an international residency that brings international artists over to New York. Its focus is really on professional development. So they bring the artists over, they give them networking, they take them on tours of New York City galleries and museums and, you know, all this exciting New York art world scene. And they invited me in as a visiting curator for 3 months, where I met with, you know, a dozen or more international artists. And then at the end of the 3 months, I was invited to curate an exhibition. It was an amazing space. It was this gallery in Tribeca called Sapar Contemporary. It was only up for 2 days and it was Memorial Day weekend. So it's like, I don't even know if it really happened, but it was an incredible amount of work and a beautiful exhibition. But so this is some of the work from 6 international artists, and they all worked in very different mediums. This show was called Urban Ecology, and they had a real mix of kind of this interest in, you know, the urbanness of New York City, but then, you know, dealing with other ideas of nature from where they come from. So these pieces along the wall, it's called New York City Brushstroke, and the artist made with all those pieces using one brushstroke where to mimic a brick wall. And the idea is that when you're walking by it and looking at it, it's like the feel when you're walking down the street in New York and kind of like walking past all the brick buildings. You know, so there's a lot of connection to kind of, you know, nature and urbanism through this show. But also, you know, as part of my practice and being an educator, being a curator, I do a lot of professional development for artists. So, you know, I've partnered with organizations like Paradise Palace, where I was a visiting arts professional and did office hours for them. And I actually curated a show for the New York Artist Circle in 2022 called Elsewhere, which still lives on their website. I've led some curatorial residencies through Equity Gallery, where we bring in a cohort of artists and kind of mentor them and work with them to curate an actual exhibition. So I really love opportunities to work with artists to kind of share knowledge and share resources. So one of the questions for me with this talk was, what do you love about curating? And there's, two parts of it as I see it. I love the idea of helping artists and getting their work out there and finding, ways for them to get exposure and meet other curators and meet other artists. And then for me, this is also really part of this holistic practice that I have as an educator, as an artist, as a curator, where this is a very creative process for me. And I really enjoy thinking about the connections between works, thinking about, where the thematic ties lie and how to bring a show together, how to kind of style it in a space so that it's really kind of speaking the most. And it's been really interesting kind of starting as more of a curator and then in the past 2 years really starting to show work as an artist. So now I'm really seeing it from both ends of things. And that's been really exciting and helped me a lot to understand what an artist is going through as throughout the curatorial practice, but also what the curator has to deal with on both ends. So I think it helps me, empathize a lot more. And then this is one of the more recent shows that I was able to curate. It was at the Clemente Center. Actually, Cecilia Andre, one of New York Artist Circle members, was in this show. And this came together really last minute. There was an opening, someone couldn't do a show. So I was like, hey, can I sneak in there and curate something? And it was, it came together like super fast. But the thing that was really exciting about this show, it was called Sanctuary. And this is an example of a show where it was also really about artist connection to place. And you can see here, there's a lot of different materiality in the show. We worked with these, there's sculptures in ceramic and resin, there's painting and collage, there's photographs, there was handmade paper, there was a video piece. Cecilia had a big tapestry over one of the windows. But this was really exciting for me because I had met all of these artists over the past 2 to 3 years. I do a lot of studio visits. I do studio visits individually. I do them as part of organizations like NARS Foundation and ISCP. And so I have a whole library and archive of artists in my brain. And this was a wonderful opportunity where I reached back to artists that I had done studio visits with 2 and 3 years ago. And I said, hey, it's here. I got it. Do you want to be in this show? So it's an example that when you meet with people, you never know what kind of impression you're going to make on them, how they're going to stick in your brain. And even if you don't get to connect with them right away, that you can always, everyone I ever meet, like there is a place for them. And I can't wait until I have the opportunity to kind of work with them and find what that is. So this was a wonderful opportunity where I got to call on all these artists that I've been wanting to work with and put this really kind of like beautiful, and I'm talking about my own work, but I'm okay with that, like elegant and thoughtful show together. I was very proud of it. Although there was one piece that I kind of had wished I had put in a different spot, and it like plagues me to this day. So it's just interesting, you know what I mean? Because you think about it and then it continues to grow in your mind. But every time I have the opportunity to curate a show, it's a learning experience. I will probably never say no. I love to work with whatever conditions and space that I have. And yeah, I appreciate being involved in all things arts. So I'm very happy to be here. So thank you all for having me and listening to my curatorial spiel. Thank you.
And I believe Nancy Nikkal, is she on Zoom?
She should be. Nancy, are you there?
If you are, unmute.
Unmute. Yes, I saw.
Okay, thank you. I always need that too. Thank you to Emily Donnelly and to Lucy Wilner for inviting me to be part of this program. And I'm sorry I can't be with you, but I'm joining.
Nancy,
Yes.
you're a little muffled. Can you, is there something in front of your microphone? I think we're having trouble hearing you.
Let me get out of the view. Is that okay now?
That's a little better. Thank you, Nancy.
So can you put up the image of the postcard that I sent you? There we go. Okay. I've done a lot of curating over the years, and I would say that my mission is to engage the audience. I'm not political. but I have a grand mission to create shows that engage the audience. And that was what I was doing at the Pelham Arts Center. I've worked at the Pelham Arts Center for 15 years. And this is important. I know the space. You know, if you're going to curate a show, you basically should know the space. You also should know their calendar of exhibitions. And over the years, as I've been at the Pelham Arts Center, I've seen the shows that they bring in. I know what they like. And I had to go through a curatorial committee with Pelham. It was a good experience because I worked very closely with the staff once I had the curated proposal approved. And the title of the show, Drawing the Line, was a way to kind of make people think about what was this all about, because it could have more than one meaning. And the works that I included all were about drawing, but it was all done with different media. Now, Eileen Hoffman was probably the star of the show because I love her work, and the show was about lines and shapes, and obviously her shapes are very strong and powerful. So what's involved with curating a show? I had to write a proposal. It had to be approved, and they wanted to know who I was, even though I'm a teacher there, and what was my connection to curating. So I had to tell them why, and that was good enough for them. So, and I had to justify my background to drawing because the title of the show was Drawing the Line. I had to include 8 artists. That was their requirement. I could not be part of the show. And how did I find the artists? Probably my background and the memberships that I belong to and the galleries that I belong to and the shows that I've seen. Okay, I had to provide a lot of information with the staff at Pelham Arts Center so that they could prepare contracts. So it was contact information. And you know, one of the previous speakers was talking about how a participant in one of her panels didn't show up. Well, you know, you build a relationship with the artist to make sure that those things don't happen. So I decided to write 8 blogs that were interviews to promote the show. And in doing that, I built a relationship with the artists and was always in touch with them to say, if they hadn't already submitted their contact information, right? So basically what I'm saying is I was working very closely with the administration at the Pelham Arts Center. And I had to work with their exhibition coordinator, John Gilbert, and I actually designed the layout, which I think that the installation for the show is very, very important. So I worked with him very closely as we planned with thumbnails exactly where the art was going to go. Now, drawing the line, the connection to the line is that I wanted the viewers, the audience, who are adults and our children, to be able to see from one piece to the other, because the Pelham Arts Center has 2 very big galleries. Shira is asking me a question. Can you repeat the name of what is that? What is that question?
I got that, Nancy, don't worry.
Okay. Okay. So I planned the installation and the interviewing the artists on my blog, Art of Collage at WordPress.com. So that's artofcollage.wordpress.com. That was a way to also promote the artists because that's my goal. I know the audience, I know what they like. I want them to become engaged in the show and to see things, to learn to see, to learn to experience the work. And some of the work might have had more information, but they didn't know it because unless they had read about the artist on the blog, they wouldn't. Okay, thank you for putting this piece on. This is one artist who's actually shown at the Pelham Arts Center before. She's a member of the Silver Mine Guild. 3 of the artists in the show were connected to the Silver Mine Guild, which is in Darien, Connecticut. And the piece on the left is a drawing, all done by hand. The artist says that the size of the work, which is approximately 40 inches, is how far she can stretch her hand across the paper as she's drawing all of these lines. The piece on the right was an installation. She's decided through meeting the other artists in the show and understanding what would be included, that she wanted to do an installation. And each of those little white pieces was actually a drawing that she put together. And I think that she said that she wanted it to be installed so it looked like a Fibonacci spiral on a pedestal. So that was something that was done maybe the last day. Another thing I should say is that a very large number of the artists installed their own work, which was really important, that they were so engaged. And how much more time do I have?
I think we should wrap it up within the next minute or so, if that's okay.
Please go to the next slide.
All right.
Okay, we had two receptions, an opening reception and a closing reception. They were both well attended because the Pelham Arts Center did a great job promoting the show on Facebook and on Instagram. What you're looking at is Eileen's work and a bunch of the artists who were talking at the panel. And the way this was set up was to draw the viewer to come closer, to see the work, to see the lines, and to read the text next to the artwork. And then this was the bigger gallery. You can see the chairs at the bottom of the image. And they had a wonderful audience, and they had good questions and a lot of good responses from the audience, from the artists, which tells you, that's an important goal. You want to have a good audience. You want to have them be engaged. And that was my goal. Previous shows I've done have been also themed, right? And I'm not going to take the time to talk about it, but thank you, Emily, and thank you to Lucy for including me in the show, in this presentation.
Thank you, Nancy.
And I'll add, as an artist who was in that show, it really was an artist's dream exhibition because, well, it was a really strong show. All the work, it was really well curated, but just the way we were thought about and treated, and the blog posts that Nancy wrote on each of us were really excellent and thorough. And the artist talk and the opening, we all got to meet each other. So it was like an artist exhibition. I loved being in it.
Thank you.
Okay, and now Lois is going to talk about what she's done for the New York Artist Circle, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I just want to say, hi, can you hear me loud enough? Well, thank you, everybody, for inviting me. I just want to have a shout out to Marcia, who could give a master class on curating. An in-person show is so much harder and rewarding, but it's harder than an online show. And as we faced the pandemic in 2020, we had this opportunity to make our website more active, more interesting. We needed content. And I've been a member for about 10 years. And it turned out that at the beginning of the pandemic, I stopped teaching at my community college. I was teaching art appreciation for about 10 years. And it was a great platform and background to be interested in doing a curation program. I felt that by teaching art appreciation, I had this overview and passion for explaining art of so many different eras and times, backgrounds, and aesthetics to people who are new to art. And so therefore, when I didn't have teaching, I kind of felt it was a good moment to kind of create something for our website. And I got very involved with the variety of shows and people in our group that have different passions and different aesthetics from my own. And I felt it was such a good way to get to know everybody better. And so I put together, this is a compilation of all the shows we did in three years. Actually, it's 4 years. In 2020, we were busy being in a pandemic and we weren't really trying to get anything online. But I'm going to talk about the shows going from the most recent one, and this is before Imaginarium, which Stacy is heading our program now. But Imaginarium is an outgrowth of these 4 years. So the first thing I did during our 4 years was form a committee. And so there were a lot of people. We had a very active committee of at least 15 to 25 people. And we formed teams to be able to take on people's interests in our group. So the artists had a diverse array of subject matter. From the very top left, we have Monique Alain, Pauline Galliana, and Anna Luisa Abdur doing coding and the idea of codes in art. I found that really an intellectually stimulating topic. I was very excited to help that become into reality. Before that, we had Eileen doing a sculpting show, Making Space, and that was exciting to see the 3D come to life on our website. And so before that, we had Fran Beeler, and I went to see, I'm blanking, the refugee show in Brooklyn. And that was such an exciting in-person show that Fran and I decided it should be on our website. So that was a sudden last-minute addition to the show. I mean, a lot of people have said that we had many shows, maybe too many shows on our website. But I think that everybody who contributed as curators was excited to do a show, and we made room for everybody. We had Lori Horowitz and Kathleen McGlory Newton do a city show. Preceding that was Seeing Music, which Yvonne Lamar Rogers and Cheryl Aiden did, which was very exciting. I mean, these topics are so unique. You may not see them in galleries. So we decided that it would be great on our website. We had a political period in late 2023, of course, with our politics. And Regina Silvers was perfect with her series of protest artwork. So we put her show on. And of course, Hayley Ferber did Elsewhere, which was exciting to have an independent curator come on board. We were trying to have a variety of outside curators plus our own member curators. And we sought people who would come and do the shows interspersed with our member shows. The garden show, I love gardens. That's kind of my expertise. And we put together a show with about 50 artists. I had a team which helped. And that was a rewarding feeling to curate a show about gardens. Another show was a city show, and that was curated by Bascove and Cora Jane Glasser. And one of the surprise secondary benefits of doing this was that I was able to be invited to be in a gallery. And this is Sarah Nightingale in the Hamptons. I've been teaching art in the Hamptons for about 20 years. I didn't pursue a gallery, but I knew Sarah Nightingale. And I had invited her to curate a show on our website. And that was exciting because we haven't had a gallerist come on board and curate, but it was exciting to have her do different type of work from her commercial gallery. She felt freed from the obligation to sell work, and it was exciting for her to curate. And she named the show Backordered, which was really relevant to our time of the pandemic. And then back to the very end on the bottom row, we had an outside curator named Ann Amateur, who followed a very big show that we did called Lost and Found. And Lost and Found involved our sense of personal loss and what we found to help us heal during the pandemic. We had 117 artists, but it was a really great show that brought us together. That was preceded by Fran Beeler, and Barbara Sherman, who brought another ecology show called Fragile Earth. And that was put online after it had been a physical in-person show. Or was it just an online show? I forget. Yeah. But it was online or it was in person? Okay, great. So, and then there's Crystal Sage, who put together a curation program prior to myself, and she brought a series of wonderful outside curators. We also had Christina Massey do a show for us, and Elizabeth Mead, who's a member and a professor of college. She does curation. So I want to go to the next slide with the highlights.
Yes, there we go.
Okay, great. All right, so my personal highlights, even though I was doing the program for all of us, I personally really enjoyed the Lost and Found show, which really brought us together. And you can see that Walter Brown on the first column, he has a mask on his face on the first row. It was really fun to work with everybody. The next show that I did, that I curated more with the team was I Dreamed a Garden. That was really incredible to have other artists love gardens as well. And then Backborders with Sarah Nightingale was very exciting to have her come on board. All of us had, in the teams, had a project manager. So if you were the curator, you kind of helped the curator as a project manager. And then of course, Audrey Anastasi's show, Refugee, was something we brought on last minute. So there was flexibility in what we did. And then coming out of this all, I have one last slide, was the Scribbles show. So Scribbles was kind of workshop, it was my idea, and we workshopped it in our committee. But it turned out that Amy Chang, who co-curated with me, she said, we should really have a show that's larger than the artist circle. Let's try to get other people involved. And then it turned out that the Carter Burton Gallery was interested in it if we would jury it, if we could jury it with the national base of artists. So it became a show at Carter Burton, and it was a great experience. First of all, you had to learn slide room, which a lot of us know it as applicants, and we apply. But when you're in the back end, it's a lot of process. On the left side, you have black background, and those are shots from the show. And you could see that it had book arts, it had sculpture, it had two-dimensional art, a lot of diversity in communicating scribble. So Amy Chang and I kind of spearheaded it, and it was great to work with the gallery. So I saw the process from the other side, and I want to draw attention, okay, to I'm done almost, okay? The very last piece is Eileen Hoffman's, and that was kind of an inspiring piece for me to do scribbles. So right now I have a lot of work to do being in a gallery. I love curating. I would love to have another project, but it was very fulfilling. And I don't know if I got it out of my system, but I did enough work to last a long time. And so I hope that it was an influential and a good experience for a lot of the members and set an example for what you can do with curating for our membership. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fabulous. I'll just add to Lois's, because at the time I was on the website committee and the steering committee, and I was working on the back end of all these shows, which was a lot of work. And I didn't feel like I really knew anything about curating at the beginning. And I learned so much because I was involved in every aspect of it, that by the time I got to my show, I knew exactly what to do. And like, it still amuses me when people send me their press, with their press letter for my opinion, because I didn't think I knew anything about that. So it is a really excellent way to learn about what's involved. And you do think differently about yourself, in the scheme, and you understand your rejections a little differently, and how to think about things, and how to handle yourself professionally as an artist in the shows you're in. So I think that's it